Hi, my name is Brandon, and this is my face. You can call me Brandon or Marlon or whatever you feel like, within reason, and also keep it clean, please. If you're new here, this is the first time my face has made an appearance on this channel. It's not a big secret that I was trying to hold on to or anything like that, but I mostly make tutorials and there's no reason to have a face covering up the screen in a game making tutorial. Alright, enough about my face. I participated in Icoso's Geo Jam, so let's get into the making of my game, Golfing Over. After I put out the mini-map series on this channel, I was feeling a little unmotivated, so I asked around on Xanderwood's Discord to see if anyone else was jamming that week, and a few people mentioned Icoso's Geo Jam. I gave the itch page a look and decided to join. I had been thinking about remaking my golf tutorial from 2 years ago on this channel into a new and improved project recently, and when Icoso announced the theme of The Other Side, I immediately thought of absolutely nothing related to a golf game. But I knew the geometric shapes part of the theme would tie in nicely to a game of miniature golf. By day 2, my brain decided to wake up and I came up with the idea of hiding geometric obstacles in the course that you can only see when you hit them or when you enter the other side. And that was it. I had a plan. It was short, it was simple, but there was still plenty of time for me to make things unnecessarily complicated, as I almost always do. But with a plan in place, I got to work and, well, here's how it all went down. I started off by taking the golf game I had made 2 years ago and recreated the ball and aiming mechanics into my new project. I ended up tweaking the physics a little before it was finished, but most of what I had made 2 years ago carried over into this game, saving me a ton of time. I got started on the aiming mechanic, then I set up some collision conditions for the ball, the obstacles, and the barrier around the course. This gave me a playable game and allowed me to be able to playtest the core mechanics very early on. But before I finished up on the first night, the word trap in trapezoid made too much sense not to be in a golf game. So I set up the physics to slow the ball down significantly as if it had hit a sand trap. Then I added some particle effects for sand to follow the ball as it traveled through and out of the trapezoid. And if that wasn't enough for day 1, I squeezed in one more part of development before calling it a night. I set up the beginnings of the hole mechanic. This is the ultimate goal in golf. Make the ball go in the hole.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
Again, much of the mechanics for the hole was taken from my golf tutorial from 2 years ago. The physics would return the overall speed of the ball object, and if it was traveling too fast, it would skip over the hole, and if it was moving really fast, you might experience your ball being flung in a different direction to simulate a ball hitting the hole and bouncing away. I finished up the hole the next day. I added a simple shrinking animation to play out when the player sinks the ball to make it look like it went in the hole. And next up was the power meter that determines how hard you hit the ball. I used my super amazing artistic skills in Sprite and created a curved bar with different colors representing low to high power. Wasn't sure what I was going to put in the middle, so a gradient circle it was. Once the beautiful art was finished, I needed to animate the meter to show it rising and lowering. I had this method in mind before I even got started on the project. I used masks and blend modes to give the illusion of the meter moving and then coded the swinging motion and distance from low to high. Then I took those coordinates and I used incredibly complicated math to figure out how hard the player would hit the ball. No, actually, I just used the angle of the masking object and multiplied it by a small percentage and fed that number into the physics engine of Construct 3. And that's really all it took. And it worked. And I wasn't trying to mess anything up, so I moved on. To end the day, I began working on the other side feature. I played around with some effects and came up with the final project you see in-game within a few minutes. After a couple of test runs, I coded in the states that would allow the player to switch between the regular world and the other side by holding the right mouse button. Altogether, the effects and code took about 30 minutes to get put in place. I wasted a ton of valuable time on Sunday trying to make a camera panning system that would start from the hole and pan through the course to the starting point as an introduction to each course. After about half a day of failed attempts, I scratched the entire feature and reverted back to a previous save. I would spend the rest of the day working on the title screen and the hint box that the player can click on to figure out some secrets that I really should not have kept secret. More on that in a minute. I wanted the hint feature to display one hint at a time to help the game seem a bit easier, and I wanted the hints to cycle through and then repeat themselves after all hints had already been read. During all of this, I created a bug that I wouldn't notice until a couple of hours before submission deadline, when I was giving the game a final playthrough. But again, more on that in a minute. And as I said, I also created the title screen this day. It wasn't up until this point that I came up with the name of the game. The effects that I had created made my wife think of talking to ghosts in some kind of limbo world. And that made me think of an old TV show called Crossing Over. I don't think I ever watched the show, but I definitely remember it being a thing way back when. So I took the name and made Golfing Over. I used the same effects and most of the same code to create the effects you see on the title screen. And as a person who deals with a lot of marketing situations in his day job, I always look for opportunities to share my platforms. So I added my YouTube, Twitter, Itch, and Discord links in the title screen, with effects of their own, of course. After I got the title screen squared away, I created the HUD that would stay at the top of the screen displaying the course number, each course's par count, and keep track of how many shots the player has taken on that course. This is where I introduced the start function. I made one of these in my Castle Run tutorial series. I use this one function at the beginning of each level to load the entire layout. This prevents me from having to place all the HUD elements, the meter, and the other side, with all its layers and effects on all 9 courses. Instead, I run a function that creates all these objects in their specific place for each course. And once you leave a course, everything is left behind and scrapped and then recreated on the next course. This saved a ton of development time, but I'm still not sure how or if it affected loading or performance. And with the time limit I was facing, I didn't really want to look into it. So for a small project like this one, I didn't think that I would run into too many performance issues. Day 4 and most of the game was in place. I wanted to give the player a sense of progression, so I created a scorecard to appear at the completion of each course. After several new variables and some basic math that proved to be a little confusing after a while, I had created a simple text screen that tallies the course score and your overall score up to that point. After showing what I had so far to the wife, she really liked the other side. As well she should, since most of it was her idea, but she kept referring to it as a spiritual or ghostly type feeling, so I thought, why not have some ghosts flying by while you're visiting the other side? I drew a simple ghost outline, dropped the object's opacity way down, gave it an effect or two, and coded it to spawn periodically and fly upwards across the screen and then fade out before it reaches the top. It's a very subtle effect that adds to the atmosphere that was honestly just being made up as I got further into development. As I tested each part of the game, I grew bored of the mouse arrow and came up with a symbol that could be used on the other side and referenced again on the title screen. This eye would become part of the game's cover art / thumbnail. The idea of the eye is to represent the third eye or the mind's eye. Basically, seeing something not seen in the normal world. I replaced the mouse cursor while the player is on the other side, and then later changed the cursor to a hand when hovering over the hint box and while hovering over the social buttons on the title screen. Day 6 had arrived and I had spent all this time building mechanics and effects. I had one test course that I was using and decided I better start designing the rest of the courses for the game. I made a template layout, copied it 9 times, and I had hand-drawn a few course layout ideas a couple days before, so course design went fairly quick. I had to make some changes as I play-tested each course, and then once I created all the courses, I ended up rearranging their order. And to wrap up Day 6, I began working on a replay feature that would allow the player to replay the course after completing it if they didn't like their score. I really wanted this to be in the game, but I ran into a bunch of problems with resetting only certain parts of the score, and I was going to have to rewrite much of what I had already done for the scoring system. So due to time constraints, I decided to axe that feature and move on. This was basically my last day to work on the game. I hadn't even started on audio yet, so I went to my very large library of music and sounds and put a few things together. Everything's pretty much a bleep or ding sound with some EQ editing. The title screen track is, well, I don't know. I've had it forever, so if you made it, then all the credit goes to you. The other side track is a 3-minute compilation of 2 noise tracks from somewhere on the internet from the past, 15 years, and about 4 or 5 sound effects randomly looped throughout. One of those sound effects is me just making sounds into my mic with chorus and delay effects applied. I checked the jam page before heading to bed, and with 15 hours left, I was happy with what I'd made. and I would spend some time throughout the next day building the itch page and call it done. I thought. It's submission day, and I was giving my game one last playthrough before exporting the final build. As I completed the first hole, I wondered if I had ever tested the hint box after going to a new course. And upon testing this, I found that the text object was recreating itself over and over again with each new course, even though the code clearly only accounted for one object. I tried a few different things and then approached panic mode. Eventually, I just had to manually destroy the object at the end of each course and store which tip it was on last into a new variable. And it seemed to work. It was like patching a leak with chewing gum, and I didn't want to be around when it failed. But everything worked out with 50 minutes and 28 seconds to go before deadline. Not all game jams will be good experiences, but this one was just what I needed. I had fun, and I felt satisfied with what I'd made, and didn't feel like anything got left out. I still have mixed feelings on game jams, and I'm already working on a video explaining that, coming soon. However, this one was run well, had a good theme, and a nice group of participants. And out of 85 submissions, I placed 7th. I am super happy with that, although I kind of question what happened with one of the categories. I mean, golf is basically made up of geometric shapes, but I did place 2nd in the theme category, so I guess that makes up for it. Now, I will say that I kept
the other side
feature somewhat a secret, and I should have clearly explained that in-game before the player got started. That was one of the common discussions on my submission page, and I felt terrible that a few people didn't get to experience the main feature of the game because I thought I was being intriguing. I was not. Lesson learned. Friends of mine here on YouTube also participated in this jam. Blank Dev placed 4th overall, and Xanderwood came in at 15th. Links to both of those games in the description. They are both good games and well worth your time. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this little journey with me. Also, if you aren't subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? We're about to hit that 1,000 mark. Alright, that's it for this one. More on the way, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.